You do not hear it at first. You are standing in the middle of a ruined room, rain hammering the boards above your head. The air is thick, not with moisture, not with dust, with something you cannot name, something that has been here for a very long time, pressed into the plaster, soaked into the rotting wood beneath your feet. And then your eyes adjust. They are everywhere. Porcelain faces, painted smiles, glass eyes catching what little light manages to crawl in through the boarded windows. Dozens of them, perched on broken shelves, lined along collapsed mantels, seated in crumbling chairs as if waiting for a gathering that ended a century ago. Every single one of them is facing the door, facing you. This is the house on Harrow Lane, and something inside it has just noticed you are here. Marcus Riley had always been the kind of person who photographed what other people were afraid to look at directly. He was 31 years old, a freelance architectural photographer out of Baton Rouge, and he had spent the better part of 5 years documenting forgotten structures across the American South, plantation houses with their histories buried beneath layers of whitewash, mill towns swallowed by kudzu, churches where the congregations had simply one day stopped arriving. He genuinely believed, that abandoned places deserved witnesses. His partner, Elena Vasquez, was different. She was a high school history teacher, precise and grounded, the kind of person who required evidence before she accepted anything. She loved Marcus deeply enough to follow him into derelict buildings, though she always made her feelings on the matter plainly known. They had driven down from Baton Rouge on a Saturday morning in mid-July, the sky already the color of a bruise by noon. The plan was simple. Photograph the old cane fields along the Teche, stop for a late lunch in Opelousas, and be back on the highway before dark. Louisiana had other ideas. The storm that rolled in from the Gulf that afternoon was the kind that does not announce itself. One moment the air is merely heavy. The next, the sky opens completely and visibility drops to nothing. Marcus pulled off Highway 182 and onto a narrow, unpaved road that wound deeper into the tree line, looking for anywhere with a roof. That was when they found Harrow Lane. The house at the end of Harrow Lane was not difficult to miss. It rose from the undergrowth like something the land had grown rather than built. A 2-story structure with a sagging wraparound porch, widow's walk overhead, and windows so filmed with decades of grime they reflected nothing. Marcus said it out loud before he even stopped the car. Beautiful. Elena said nothing. She was watching the tree line. The property had once clearly been something, the bones of formal gardens still pressed up through the grass, iron fence posts twisted with wisteria gone to rot, a stone path nearly invisible beneath moss, the ghost of a fountain clogged with dark water. Someone had loved this place once in a way that outlasted them. They made it to the porch at a run, Marcus with his camera bag held over his head, Elena already at the door. It was not locked. It had not been locked in a very long time. It simply swung inward, as if the house had been expecting company. Inside, the smell hit them first. Not rot, something older than rot, something closer to grief. And then Elena noticed something Marcus had not yet seen. Along the far wall of the entrance hall, arranged with extraordinary care on a series of wooden shelves that had somehow survived intact, were the dolls. Not scattered randomly as you might expect to find in an abandoned place, not tipped or broken or left behind. Arranged, each one upright, each one facing outward, each one with those painted glass eyes oriented toward whoever walked in through that door. Elena pulled her jacket tighter and told herself it was only the chill. She did not look at them again. Not yet. Marcus moved through the space the way he always did, methodically, framing shots, narrating under his breath. He found a back parlor where a piano had collapsed in on itself, a kitchen with cast-iron pots still hanging on their hooks, a staircase that groaned under his weight but held. Elena stayed near the entrance. She told herself she was keeping watch on the storm. The truth was, she did not want to go deeper. She was standing near the shelves, carefully not looking at the dolls, when she noticed one that was different from the others. It was set apart from the row, positioned on a lower shelf at roughly eye level, smaller than the rest, dressed in a faded cream gown, the fabric softened by age into something almost organic. Its face was cracked along one cheek, the porcelain split cleanly from temple to jaw. But the eyes were intact, and they were oriented, not forward like the others, but slightly, just slightly, to the left, toward where Elena was standing. She stepped to the right. She looked back. The eyes had not moved. Of course they had not moved. They were glass. She almost laughed. Then Marcus called out from the upper floor. He had found something. Come look. She was halfway up the stairs when the sound reached her from below, soft, rhythmic, like a child humming. She stopped, gripped the banister. The sound dissolved into the white noise of the rain on the roof, and she could not be entirely certain she had heard it at all. She kept climbing. What Marcus had found was a room at the end of the upper hallway that was sealed. Not locked, sealed. The door frame filled in with boards, the boards themselves dark with age, as if this room had been closed off not last year but decades ago. Marcus had his hand on one of the boards, already working out how to pry it loose. Elena told him not to. He did it anyway. The room beyond was small, a child's room. The wallpaper was a pattern of small blue flowers, mostly intact, which was somehow worse than if it had been deteriorated. A child's bed frame, iron, still in place, a small wardrobe, door hanging open. And on the wall opposite the window, a painted portrait, full-length, life-size, framed in dark wood, a girl of perhaps 8 or 9 years old in a white Sunday dress. She was standing in what appeared to be the entrance hall of this very house, and in her arms, held carefully, was a doll, the doll with the cracked cheek. Elena felt the room tilt, not physically, something internal, as if the floor of her thinking had shifted 3 degrees, and everything she understood was now slightly off level. Marcus was already taking photographs. Elena moved closer to the portrait without entirely meaning to. The girl's expression was neutral, not smiling, not frightened, simply watching. And the longer Elena looked, the more she became certain that the girl in the painting was not looking at some unknown point in the middle distance. She was looking at Elena. Para-researchers who study residual haunting, what some call imprint energy, describe this phenomenon with a term borrowed from physics, emotional resonance saturation. The theory holds that spaces where extreme suffering occurred become, over time, literally saturated with that emotional frequency. The walls absorb it, the objects absorb it, and certain individuals, those who are, for reasons not yet understood, more neurologically open to external frequency, can access that residual energy as involuntary memory. What happened to Elena in that room may have been exactly this. She saw it all at once and none of it in sequence. This house, long ago, as something alive, voices, movement, the smell of cooking, the sound of a child's feet on these same floors. Then the girl. Then something that ended the girl quietly and was never spoken of again. And then others, not visitors, brought here in the years that followed when the house passed to different hands and darker purposes. Women who came in and did not leave, whose voices were recorded in these walls the way sound records itself into wax. And the doll set to watch, always to watch. Marcus was saying her name. She could hear him from very far away. She turned toward him, and Marcus knew immediately that something was wrong. Not wrong the way a person looks when they are frightened, wrong the way a person looks when they are not entirely the person they were a moment ago. Elena's eyes were open and oriented toward him, but the attention behind them felt distant, relocated, as if whatever was operating her body was doing so from somewhere slightly further back than her face. She smiled. Marcus had known Elena for 4 years. He knew her laugh. He knew the way her face arranged itself in sleep. He knew the particular smile she used when she found something genuinely funny, and the different one she used when she was being polite. This was neither of those. He said her name. She tilted her head. He said it again, louder, and reached for her hand. She let him take it. Then she turned and began walking toward the door, toward the hallway, toward the stairs. He followed. At the top of the staircase, she stopped. Below, in the entrance hall, something was standing at the edge of the flashlight's reach. A figure, female, in white clothing that moved as if in a wind that was not present. It did not have the quality of something solid. It had the quality of something that had stopped being solid a long time ago and had not fully accepted this. Elena descended 1 step. Marcus grabbed her arm, and she turned on him with a force and a speed that was entirely wrong for Elena, for any Elena he had ever known, and said, in a voice that was adjacent to Elena's voice but not quite hers, that she was not leaving. She said, after so long, finally someone who can hear us. There is a documented phenomenon in paranormal research known as opportunistic attachment, the theory that certain residual presences, rather than being spirits in the conventional sense, are concentrations of stored emotional energy that attach to a living host when that host's psychological defenses are sufficiently lowered. What had lowered Elena's was the portrait, the sustained involuntary empathic contact. She had opened a door inside herself she did not know was there, and something very old had walked through it. Marcus looked down at the figure in the hallway. He looked at Elena. He looked back at the shelves, at the doll with the cracked cheek and the eyes that were never quite facing forward. He understood then what he had to do. He grabbed the doll from the shelf. Elena screamed, and it was not Elena's voice, and began to descend the remaining stairs toward him. He had his lighter already out of his pocket, the one he carried not for cigarettes but out of habit, out of the years of outdoor work in places where you sometimes needed fire. He flicked it open. The doll caught. Old fabric, old stuffing, whatever was inside the porcelain shell ignited with a speed that surprised him, and he dropped it onto the stone of the old fireplace hearth, the one place in the room that would not burn further. The figure at the edge of the room made a sound that Marcus has never been able to describe to anyone with language that feels accurate. Not a scream, not a voice, something structural, like something that had been compressed for a long time suddenly and violently decompressing. Elena collapsed on the 3rd stair from the bottom. He caught her. She was conscious within minutes, shaking, cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature of the air. She could not immediately account for where she was or how she had gotten to the staircase. Her last clear memory was standing in front of the portrait. They left before the doll was finished burning. Marcus did not photograph the house again. He did not retrieve his secondary camera bag in the parlor where he had set it down. They walked out into the rain, which had already begun to ease, and drove in complete silence back toward the highway. 3 days later, Elena told him what she had experienced inside the portrait vision, not in fragmentary impressions as she had initially described it, but in full and detailed sequence. The girl who lived there and the circumstances of her passing which she could not have known, the women brought to the property in the years that followed, the way the doll was placed as an anchor, an object of concentrated attention, a focal point for whatever had accumulated in those walls over more than a century. She said, "It was not a haunting, it was a holding. Whatever was in that house was not staying, it was being kept." Para-researchers who have since looked into the history of the Harrow Lane property, and several have, following a local historical inquiry that surfaced 2 years prior, found documentation of a girl named in parish records as Celestine, the daughter of a sugar merchant who passed suddenly in 1887 at the age of 9. The cause listed was fever. The property changed hands repeatedly in the following decades. Several of those transactions occurred under circumstances that local historians describe only as irregular. The doll is not in the property records. It is not in any records. Marcus and Elena have not returned to St. Landry Parish. They have not spoken publicly about what happened on Harrow Lane. This account comes from a source close to them who confirmed the details after Marcus showed a colleague the photographs he did take that night. The interior shots, the shelves, the portrait, the sealed room. He has not shown anyone the final photograph, the one he does not remember taking, the one on his camera roll that appears between the shot of the portrait and the shot of the hallway. In that photograph, Elena is standing at the foot of the stairs, facing the camera, her expression neutral. Behind her and to her left, just at the edge of the flashlight's reach, there is a second figure, shorter, in a white dress, holding something in her arms. Marcus burned the doll. He has looked at that photograph many times since that night, always with the specific and methodical attention he gives to images he does not yet fully understand. He has noticed something he did not notice immediately. The second figure in the photograph, the shorter one in the white dress, is not looking at the camera. She is looking at Elena. And in her arms, where she is holding what she is holding, whatever it is she carried across more than a century to be standing in that hallway at that precise moment, it is not burned.